What's going on, everybody? I'm Johnny Brooke from Crafted Workshop, back for episode number 50 of the Crafted Podcast. Podcast all about making stuff by hand, woodworking, metalworking, leather, electronics, and more. We put out new episodes every Thursday on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, pretty much everywhere podcasts are available. And we also live stream every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If you want to catch our live stream, check us out on YouTube. Just search for Crafted Podcast. We'll be the first thing that comes up. You can live chat with us there, get your questions answered on the show, and it's a lot of fun. You can also follow us on social media at Craft Podcast. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That's another great place to ask us questions or tag us in your listener projects. Also, if you like the show, go ahead and give us a rating on iTunes. That's super helpful. A 5-star rating would be very much appreciated. And last, we are on Patreon. So we added a $250 goal for a weekend show. That's patreon.com/craftedpodcast. We got a bunch of support levels over there, a weekly after show, monthly hangouts, and our top patrons of the week are Make, Build, Modify, Master None, and Debbie Brooke. Now, without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my co-hosts. As always, I've got James Wright from Wood by Wright. What's going on, James?
Oh, not too much, but thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here today.
And I've got Zack Herberholz from Fabrications. What's up, Zack?
How's it going?
Pretty good. That was a good one, James.
It's compounded by the fact, and you guys won't be able to hear this, but we're working with some new recording software. So as we're talking, it sounds like we're at like a NASCAR race because there's like a
very annoying
200
echo.
Millisecond delay on everything. So it's everything sounds strange to us.
Yes, it's a weird one, but we'll have to figure that out next week. We didn't really get on early enough to iron out the echo, but we'll figure it out. And anyway, it's all good. So I guess, what have you guys been working on? Zack, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Let me find my there it is. Nope, that's the wrong one. I have the stuff written down because my memory is terrible. There we go. So it's been a crazy couple weeks, and I always say that, and it's always true. So if you guys follow along my Instagram, I spent the past 2 weekends working with Harley at Iron Dog Knife Works down in Bradenton, which is about an hour and a half south of me. So we made like a little mini cleaver that was so much fun. It was my first knife. I have a lot of footage, and it's going to be I'm going to put a video out of it, and it's probably going to be really long. And it's going to be a totally different style of video than I normally do because there's a lot of information, and I've wanted to do knives and blades for a while, and or at least try my hand at them. And it's really hard to find information out there. There's so many people doing it, and there's not one right way to make a blade, and it depends on the steel, and there's so many different ways to do it. And what you end up with is when you go down that, when you try and absorb as much knowledge on the internet is, half of it's hard to find somebody's strategy from beginning to end. You'll find like, oh, here's how I do this part. And then you'll find somebody else how they do steps 2 to 3. And then somebody else has this, so there's just this giant conglomeration of, information out there. And, so I wanted to put all of this information into one video that shows from beginning to end, every step, talks, about how essentially we went from a blank to a forged blade. And half of it's for me because I'm trying to learn how to do this stuff. So it's going to serve as a good reference to me when I start making my own. So that's probably going to be out in a few weeks. I'm finishing up that industrial shelf build. That's going to the same guy that I did the sliding barn doors and that red industrial desk for. So I just did the finish on that. Hopefully today I will start applying the finish to the boards, the shelves on that. And if I'm lucky, I'll get that video out either late this week or early next week. Also been talking to Bushmills about doing some lighting or something for them. That's kind of in the beginning stages. So we'll see what happens, but there's been a lot going on.
Nice. Cool, man. James, what about you?
I've been working on my kitchen. I'm actually taking kind of like a hiatus from making videos for a little while I remodel my kitchen, and that's going to end up producing a few videos out of it eventually. But right now, honestly, if you when I say my kitchen, I mean the entire upstairs, because it's the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, the kids' play area, the hallway, the whole 9 yards is going to be torn apart. And if you look at it right now, it looks like the pictures you're seeing coming out of houses that were flooded in Houston, because the chunks of drywall are missing. There's piles of debris and tile flooring and plywood and carpet scraps, and everything is just, it's absolutely in the absolute most chaotic point at the moment. So
you got a solid nose whistle going on there.
do I? Sorry. I'm like so loaded with dust right now. It is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, dude, that's an insane. I was looking at your Instagram stories. That is quite the demo you've got going on.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the demo is done today. That's my goal. Is I can get I had to move a couple switches because I'm removing a wall, and so I got the electrical done last night, and I'll be hanging the drywall patches to fill the few holes in the wall today. So yeah, it's quite the project. I mean, I've done more kitchens than I can count, but when it's your own kitchen and you're living in it, because basically I told my kids now, because we used to have the rule that when you're in the house you wore socks, you took your shoes off. So now the rule is when you're in the house you wear shoes, because you never know what you're going to be stepping on.
Yeah.
But then come to find out, my two youngest boys were sleeping last night in their shoes.
Wow.
But I'm looking forward to it all being at least to the point where I'm okay with walking around in the house and not thinking about stepping on a board with nails or shards of glass or other things. So
how do you? I mean, are you cooking? I mean, because you don't have a sink in there or anything, right? I mean, that's
no. We're using the
counters.
bathroom sink. The neck in the bathroom sink is high enough so I can get something underneath it to fill up cups and things. So we have cups in the bathroom, all of our where we drink from. The refrigerator is plugged in, but the refrigerator kind of gets moved around to whatever plug is currently working. So I'm rolling it around in the kitchen and living room and on the carpet. That's a lot of fun. But we don't have a microwave. We don't have a stove. So everything's got to be, eaten cold, or we're going out to eat. So,
jeez, how long are you planning on this taking?
I will probably be without the stove, dishwasher for another 2 weeks, I'm guessing.
Holy crap.
I'll probably get the microwave up and running in another week and a half. And that'll probably be when the sink goes in too. So it'll be, a lot of fun.
So how are you doing the cabinets? Did you just buy cabinets or?
Yeah, we bought unfinished cabinets, and so those will all go into the garage where I can then finish them all. And we got a hickory that I'm actually going to stain. I know a lot of people out there be like, "You're staining it." Yes, I'm going to stain the hickory because I want it to match a little bit more of the color and tone we're going for. And then we actually just yesterday I got all of the wood flooring came in, so 450 square feet of white oak flooring, number 2 common. So it's a lot of knotty wild grain, a lot of sapwood, and some crazy colors in it. But it's going to require a lot of epoxy filling of little holes and open knots and things like that. So when I go to put it down, I'm going to lay it all down, and I'm going to do it with just hand tools, because I'm a glutton for punishment.
Man.
And then I'm gonna go through, and once it's all down, I'm gonna spend 2 or 3 days doing several applications of epoxy fill to fill all the holes. Then use planes to smooth the entire floor out, and then it's water locks finish. So
wow.
It'll be quite the ordeal. So there'll be probably like 5 or 6 days in a row where you just don't get to walk on the floor.
And you have to do all that before you can put cabinets in, right?
No, that'll go in after cabinets, because that'll go around the cabinets.
Oh, okay. So you're just doing the cabinets right on the subfloor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be doing the cabinets and the sink and the microwave, get that all up and running, and have a semi-functioning kitchen. So, because right now everything from the cabinets is stored in Rubbermaid totes in our living room, and that's getting shuffled around as we have to move things around. So I'm looking forward to getting the cabinets up and running, and then get everything into the cabinets so I have more space to actually work with. Yeah, and then I'll be building all the trim for the baseboards and windows, and I'll be making that by hand, crown molding. And hopefully I'll have a working kitchen again sometime before Thanksgiving.
Whew, man, that's a lot. So is that traditional that the cabinets would not go on top of the hardwood floor? I mean, isn't it? Because how do you account for expansion? Do you just put like quarter round around the bottom of your cabinets or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little piece of trim, and it can be. Excuse me. It depends. Some people like to put it underneath and put the cabinets on top of it. Some people like to run it through. If I were building it new, I probably would just run it through. But in this case, it's easier just to put the cabinets down first and go to the cabinets.
Yeah, because then at least you can be in there. Because man, that's that makes me very stressed. Just thinking that all through.
Because my wife is basically gone for this week and next week, because she just gets overly stressed with the torn apart house.
Yeah.
So, she'll be back late tomorrow night, so I'm hoping to have the place cleaned by then, so that it's subfloor and the drywall's up and mudded, and I'll be ready for the first coat of paint. And so it'll be at least clean, like just won't have the kitchen to work in. And then she's gone next week, so I'll be able to hopefully get the cabinets in next week.
Well, good luck, sir, because that sounds like a lot of work with hand tools.
Yeah, and then on top of all that, I'm going to be building a lathe during this time. Because I do want to put out at least one video a week, and so the videos in this time will be over the course of building the lathe for the shop.
Yeah.
So it's a busy time in my life right now.
No kidding, man. That's quite an undertaking with power tools. So good luck, sir. That's all I can say. Good luck.
I'm allowing myself to use a drill for like cabinet installation and that type of thing.
I would very much hope so.
And I'm going to be using a Sawzall. I have to cut one board today, and I don't want to use one of my saws because I have to cut through some of the drywall with it as well. I don't want to rip up one of my good saws with that, so I'm going to use a Sawzall for that. But other than that, the entire project will be basically hand tools.
And so is this, the kitchen will be content for your channel?
The flooring will be content.
Okay.
I might do the cabinet installation. I haven't decided yet. And then I'm also doing a solid surface Corian countertop. And I'm actually making the countertop. So I'm ordering a sheet, a 1/2 inch thick, 30 inch by 145 inch long sheet. And I'll be making the countertop out with all hand tools. So that should be a fun video.
Nice, man. Well, good luck.
Need it.
So I've just been chugging along on this dining table and matching benches. It's a big project. A lot of work involved in this one, and getting very close. I will be delivering it this weekend, so that'll be good. Still not totally sure when the video is going to be out. I was hoping to have it out today, actually, but I'm just behind, so that is not going to happen. I'm really happy with the way it's looking, though. Got all of the parts installed on the table itself, so got the kind of stretcher that connects the legs to each other installed, and then also got the 2 aprons installed. And that table is so tall and long that it had a lot of kind of side to side play previous to installing the aprons in the stretcher, and I'm glad it really kind of tightened things up. So that makes me feel a lot better, just because, it's like 44 inches tall, 60 inches long, and 1.5 inches thick, and one big kind of looks like a staple, one big long kind of C shape. So it definitely needed some kind of lateral structure to give it a little more stability there. But it's looking cool. Got all the edges, like a really heavy chamfer on it, and I'm just continuously amazed by this the festival router I have. It has that little edge kind of guide or guard, I guess, and basically it surrounds the entire bit when you're doing like edge, like edge profile stuff like chamfering, and there is almost no dust. It is absolutely amazing how effective that thing is. So I am definitely happy to have that thing for this project, because it's a lot of chamfering for sure. So outside of that, I've just been working on the design for this assembly table. I don't know why I am having so much trouble with finalizing the design on this thing. I think I finally have gotten it very, very close, but I'm trying to integrate a lot of things that my current one doesn't have. Basically, I currently have like the Polk one from FastCap, and the problem is it has these two big grooves routed on either side for, I guess, like miter gauges to run out into, because it's meant to be kind of used with a contractor saw. Well, the problem is like these just create these kind of like 3-inch wide, half-inch recessed areas on the top of this assembly table, and like it's just a pain during glue ups. My clamps are always like kind of getting down in there and getting caught, and gets glue built up in there, and it's just, I don't need them. They're absolutely useless for me. So I want to replace it. I'm going to be installing a T-track system on the top of this one, which will be cool because I have the workbench now. So if I really need like that kind of, I don't know, holding power on the top down, I can use the workbench for that. But then the T-track will give me a ton of options as far as work holding and setting up jigs and that kind of stuff. And hopefully I can get it square enough to where I can actually like create some, little jigs for like putting together like pocket hold stuff and things like that really will be helpful. So I'm also going to build in like a little air hose reel. So my compressor will kind of be down underneath the assembly table, and the hose reel will just be kind of tucked down there. So I can just pull it out and it'll automatically retract. Cause right now my compressor and air hose are kind of on the floor. Like I'm always tripping over them. So not a good location for those. And going to have one of the biggest things I wanted to add was storage for all my sustainers, all the festival stuff. Cause those things are kind of a pain if you're not, if you don't need to move them around and they're just sitting on the ground. They are very much in the way and not super accessible all the time. So building a drawer system for those, and debating on whether to do a torsion box top or not. I've never done one of those, and they seem like quite a bit of work. And but it does make for a very flat, very strong top. So I don't know, but lots of design considerations on the assembly table, but that should be hopefully a relatively fast build, and definitely going to be a nice addition to the shop. Have a lot more storage and just be a lot more organized in that area. So yeah, I guess let's go ahead. We're going to do another kind of Q&A episode. So this has been it's been good. We really enjoyed the show last week, so going to give that a shot and see how that goes. So I guess the first question we have is a really good one from Metal and Grain. And when we're building a project, do we think about design, content, or usability first? So that I think is very interesting. I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I do. I'm very heavy into the usability. I like to build something functional and then look at it and say, what can I do to make this functional thing look better? As opposed to making something look good and then try to fit the functionality into it. But that's very much my style. And so that's, I like very functional, rugged things. I like a little bit more of a rustic feel. So yeah, although I have to say, I think that kind of boils down to what is your personal taste.
Yep. I mean, for me, I think it's got to be a combination of all three, because I think there are, especially for us as content creators, obviously the content side is going to be important. So one, we can't really build the same or very similar thing that we've built in the past, because that doesn't, make particularly good content. And also we need to, I think, keep in mind how we're building it and, trying to make it a little more accessible sometimes. And I know that's always a struggle for me, because I think there are the easiest way I could do something and then the most accessible way I could do something, and trying to find some kind of middle ground there, just because I'm fortunate enough to have some nice stuff in the shop that makes things a lot easier, but I know not everybody has that. So that's obviously a big factor. And then as far as like structural stability and things like that, that always has to be in the forefront as well. So I think, as you get more into woodworking, you realize that, design is not this completely open thing. We have constraints, whether that's the size that lumber comes in generally, or wood movement, or joinery, or whatever it is. So that has to be a pretty big factor too. It's not like you can just come up with any shape and make it out of any material, because there are things to consider there. And then also, that for us having to put out content regularly, you got to make these things decently simple enough to build so that they don't take you a year to create. So I think all of those have to be kind of balanced. And I think it's tough because, ease of building and the kind of usability factor, I think, tends to make things kind of boring design wise. So yeah. I think it's incorporating elements that, while they might slow down the build process, they can really make the piece a lot more special. So that's, to me, that's always the biggest balancing act, and then especially with joinery, not trying to lean too hard on the domino, because I know everybody doesn't have one of those, and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, then also with the aesthetics, there are different methods of adding aesthetics, because you have the very modern, clean style that you have to start with that before you can work on anything else. So you make the style you want, and then you create its usability, because it's something that's very, well, not constraining, but it has a specific feel. But then, like in mine, often the design and specialty comes from it with like carving or add-ons, things that don't actually change the shape.
Mm-hmm.
They just add to the look or the aesthetic of it, as opposed to changing its build.
Yeah. I mean, oh, go ahead.
I think for me, I mean, it's kind of a codependency, but I like to, I mean, obviously function. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, most of the stuff that I do is commission pieces, and it is functional. It's not necessarily art first and foremost. But that's not to say that the two can't kind of have a middle, meet somewhere in the middle. And I think I like what I like is a challenge to me in the projects, is to try and serve the function, but in a new way. I mean, and if you boil down, for instance, say a chair, take away everything that, I mean, strip it down to what you need for a functional chair. I mean, depending on the type of chair, it might just be a place to sit, and it might, it might also need a backrest or whatever the functionality calls for, and take everything away. And so you're left with just a seat and a backrest, and then try and find a new way to do those two things. Like there's a few types of chairs that they all kind of do the same thing. Like, what's a new way to connect those two pieces, or what's a new way to, I mean, maybe it could be suspended from above, or maybe, just trying to get that creative, process, and trying to figure out a new way to do a very basic function. I think it's really easy to get stuck in the mindset of, usually what happens is, I could see the trap being set is, you need to design something, and you go to Pinterest and you look at 100 pictures of how to design a table or a bench or something. You're already going down that road of finding things to copy and finding things to emulate, which isn't necessarily bad, but I feel like that can get you stuck design wise. What else? Something that I like to do is, if I'm designing a bench, I'll look at pictures of things that aren't benches and try and figure out how I can work that into the design of a bench, and or whatever the piece may be, because I feel like you're combining things that don't yet exist or that haven't been combined. So I feel like that's, for me, that's a good way to come up with, like an original design, is just to kind of mix things up and to go about it in a non-traditional manner. So that's, I mean, it sort of depends, but content comes last for me. I feel like if the functionality, or primarily since we're, talking about YouTube and stuff, if the design is there, then the content will be there. So that's my approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of the larger scale pieces don't tend to do as well on YouTube, just because,
They don't.
I mean, look at, a lot of the stuff we build, Zach, is not, nobody's going to rebuild that industrial desk, or I highly doubt that anybody's going to rebuild this dining table I'm building. You know what I mean? Like, it's these kind of big monolithic pieces that require a lot of time and a lot of material cost. I just think it's it's a less likely thing. So the pieces I've seen people reproduce the most are the smaller things. Like, I think I've seen more people rebuild that little guitar stand I made than anything else. So I think that is it really depends on your strategy for YouTube, and I think us being I guess client build people as well as YouTube people, that's a tough balancing act. And I think that's why I've reduced my client build stuff, just because, I mean, it's, not being able to control what the project is definitely has a negative effect potentially on your channel. But then on the flip side, like that computer desk I built for that dude, I would have never chosen to build a computer desk. And, it ended up being a really good video for me, and I've sold a bunch of plans. So it just really, it's kind of like a wild card thing. And I think hard to decide which way is the best route. But, I think the people who are super, super successful in our field, the content is probably their first focus. So yeah, but it is tough. And I mean, again, doing client work, obviously our customer is the one dictating the design and that kind of stuff at that point. So,
well, that's what keeps it interesting too, is that everybody has a different approach and a different mindset. If everybody, I feel like there's the majority of people that watch YouTube are probably in it for the content. I mean, actually, without a doubt. I mean, they want to be entertained. They're not necessarily for drawing inspiration first and foremost. That's
totally.
Probably not it. As much as I like to think that people are watching things trying to learn how to replicate them, that's probably not the case.
No.
But then there are that, there's that group of people that's what they want. And, maybe it's a smaller target audience, but, different strokes, I guess.
Well, and, I think for me, the biggest reason I watch things is one, inspiration as far as design, but then two, picking up those little nuggets of wisdom, because no matter how long you do this, there's always little techniques and tips that you might pick up just by watching somebody else do something. So,
absolutely.
I think, it's difficult, because I do think a lot of us kind of pander to the people who don't have the tools, like just worrying that they won't be able to build it themselves or complaining. But what is frustrating is I think 99% of those times the people who are complaining have no intention to actually build the dang thing anyway. So it's, they're just complaining for complaining's sake. So I know, like, both, modern builds and homemade modern obviously really focus on keeping things, beginner friendly and not super tool intensive, and using materials that are easily accessible. But, I don't know. I think a lot of times the flack we get for that is just from people who want to whine about something. So it's tough. So for me, I think the most success I've had is just building stuff that I think is very cool, and that, that when I don't have my kind of, passion or heart behind something I'm building, I think it really shows, and those videos very rarely do well. So, if it's just like a throwaway project that's like a filler, between two other big ones or whatever, it's kind of obvious. So, I think just do what you will. So, yeah. All right. What do we got next here? So, question from Make Brooklyn. How does being a content creator affect your timeline and completing projects? So he says for him, filming makes it take easily 3 times longer than it otherwise would. So I don't know. I think the more you do it, the more efficient you get. I think it's really hard to quantify that number. And I think it depends project to project too, because some projects I'm like really feeling like getting extra fancy with my camera work, and other projects I'm like, I'm going to stick this thing in the corner and I need to get this built. So, I think that's highly variable. What about you guys?
I think it depends on the type of video, because if I'm doing a video where I'm building something and I'm going to show clips of the build throughout the video, but throughout the, as opposed to capturing most of it, then I'm going to be videoing like, making one of the 6 tenons, whereas I'm not going to video all 6 of them. I might, shoot a couple different angles on a later one. But that adds some time to it, but it's not a huge amount of time in the actual video, the actual building work. I would say it probably adds about 50% of time to that. Whereas if I'm actually wanting to teach something, so I'm going to build a small project and I want to video as much of it as possible, then that can often double, triple, or quadruple the amount of time, because I need to video every moment of it. And so I'm constantly stopping, changing video angle, or starting, stopping a different camera, moving them around, and that takes a lot of time. Whereas if I'm just shooting more of a documentary, yes, it takes some more time, but not a huge amount. I think the big thing is once you start jumping into editing, then your time goes out the window, because that's you have to find ways to make that faster.
Yeah, edit is by far the slowest process.
Absolutely. This question kind of shoehorns in with Keith Johnson Woodworking's question, which was when you guys put together a YouTube video, do you record everything and then do a marathon editing session, or do you work in chunks and edit as you finish each phase of the project? I find that now, when I started out, I recorded more, and then because the edit sessions took so long, and I much prefer being out in the shop than inside in front of my computer, I think I've learned to record in shorter segments in chunks, and it's a lot less editing on my part. And I feel like for me, my kind of philosophy behind editing is like not necessarily to show all of the details and stuff, but to show kind of all of the process. And you don't need to see 30 minutes of me grinding sped up to 6 seconds if just 6 seconds of standard grinding will convey the same message. So I think pacing is kind of where I'm at right now, and trying to figure out like, well, do I want condensed sped up clips, or do I want a little bit of real time clips, or somewhere in the gray area? That's something I haven't quite developed a philosophy on yet. But I've to answer that question, I definitely find myself doing less recording, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now, I guess.
Yeah, I think actually Making It talked about this recently on one of their shows. I can't remember which episode, but this thing that stuck out to Bob had also stuck out to me. Jimmy said it months ago, and some guy he learned from. Basically, the idea is get in late and get out early. So you don't need to show every part of the process, because people will connect these things in their brain. So instead of showing every table saw cut sped up to 2,000% speed, show 3 of them, and then people will realize, oh, okay, he cut the rest of these parts out on the table saw as well. Same with anything, miter saw, jointer, planer. Especially to me, dimensioning lumber is one of the most boring things to show on camera, and it is basically the way I start every single video. So I'm like flying through those at this point, because it's like, if you don't understand the concepts of dimensioning lumber, then there are tons of videos to go figure that out.
Even in the hand tool world, where it looks kind of cool, it's still the boring project, because you're doing the exact same thing on every project. That's why most of the time I try and speed through that, and I say, if you really want to know that, here's a video on that topic.
Yeah, and if anybody complains about tools, it's always about the jointer and planer to me, because that is like the tool that people don't have, So I've really considered just stopping showing it and saying, hey, here's my dimensioned lumber. You could buy it like this at Rockler or your local lumber store. Do that. Now let's start cutting things to length and size. So
yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, okay, I remember. A few like a minute ago, we were talking about, not showing everything because people kind of can put that together, and I kind of think I haven't really elaborated on it or figured out how to utilize it, but I think that it's almost good to not have everything mapped out so obvious. I feel like it's actually more engaging sometimes for people to go, when they're watching, go, oh, wait a minute, what just happened there? I think that's good. And maybe they'll have to go back and be like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, I feel like that's more engaging, because sometimes, I mean,
yes,
there's a lot of incredible makers out there on YouTube, but I find myself drifting off and doing other things as I'm watching their videos. And for me, like, I don't want that to happen when people watch my videos, because they're so good. Like, they're so, but if I can tell exactly what's coming next and what they're going to be doing next, and I get that process, then I'm liable to, my attention is going to go somewhere else. So I think that, like I said, I don't know how to utilize that, but I feel like if you can make it a little bit more, I can't think of the word, but a little less obvious, then I think it can sometimes be more engaging and make for, more engaging content.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, and I think it's easy. I think part of what you're probably talking about is people's videos becoming formulaic, and we all, I think, fall into our routine. It's like, okay, we get these couple angles at the table saw and the couple angles at the jointer, and you know what I mean, because in all of our shops, there's really only so many places the camera can even go, and it's like, oh, well, I've got that distracting thing in the background over here, so I'm not going to show that, and this half of the shop's a mess, so I'm not going to show that. So you become accustomed to where the camera goes, and you start getting those same shots. And then when, like, for me, I know when I'm typing out my voiceover, it's very easy for me to kind of say the things the same way video to video. And so I think just changing those things up and keeping things fresh, and like for me, getting that slider has actually really made me pay attention to the camera again a lot more, because I think I found myself just going through the motions, getting the footage, and while it conveyed the information well, it wasn't particularly exciting, So I think challenging yourself with whether that's new gear or a different camera or whatever, like to me, I think it would be interesting for myself, like, to film an entire project with just a GoPro, because I know for a fact it would look entirely different, and I'd come up with a lot of interesting angles just because of the form factor and limitations of that camera. So I think we get into these grooves, and whether that's a new lens or whatever, I think that can make a really big difference. But to answer Keith's original question, I tend to edit kind of almost as I import. I think a lot of times when I fill up my card, it's kind of a good time to take a break anyway. And I've got a couple cards, but honestly, I usually take a break when I fill one up, come in, get it importing, and then I might look through some of the other footage and make some rough cuts. And that way, when I get to the end of the project, especially with a long one like this dining table build, I don't know, it's one, it would become a lot to edit, and two, if I missed any shots, since this dining table and the two benches are basically the same, the benches are just smaller, I can get that shot that maybe wasn't super clear first time around.
I'm curious, so how do you guys go about your, like, the actual editing? Not to get into too much depth, but I usually so I'll just import everything. So I just have this massive, like, blob of clips. And then usually I throw them in the timeline, and before I do any speed editing or anything, I'll go through them and I'll cut out anything before and anything after that's irrelevant.
Definitely.
And then I'll usually go through it a few times and shorten things up and speed them up. I'm not sure if you guys do the same thing, but
Yep, that's basically identical. Because I mean, once you've sped something up, it's a lot more of a pain to pick out. Like, okay, if you're running over to grab a clamp, or somebody came to your doorbell, or you know what I mean, like whatever it is, cutting out those sections that just don't need to be there at all. And then if I'm gonna speed it up, then I basically in Final Cut you can make it like a combination clip, like you can combine like say I had 1 6-minute long clip of me, I don't know, doing a glue up, and halfway through I left the frame for a minute, I cut out that minute of emptiness and then combine those two into one clip again. So then when I speed them up and when I go to color grade and stuff, there's still Final Cut still sees them as one shot technically.
Or if you flip out and kick your glue bot across the shop.
Exactly. There you go. That's that hasn't happened in a while, luckily. I've really been better with my glue ups recently. I don't know what's changed, but I think just being more strategic with getting my clamps out and making sure everything's ready to go, and doing things in sections, like really breaking up the glue ups, because that table, the dining table had the potential to be a absolute nightmare of a glue up, and the fact that I really just kind of did it stage by stage made it not so bad. So yeah,
I try not to shoot any clip that's longer than like 30 seconds, just so that it saves me the editing time.
Yeah,
but I do also like to I like to do all my editing at the end. I don't like to pre-edit anything.
Yeah, see, I love to pre-edit it. I like to watch my stuff through a ton of times, and between the time I get it rough cut and then record the voiceover and the time it becomes the final video, it changes so much in that kind of few hours of editing. It usually goes from this really loose kind of not well paced video to something that's very tight with no wasted time. So that's that I am super ADHD, like actually am, and so like I have to be able to watch my own videos easily. So that's my goal for myself.
I can only stand to watch them. Like once I think I have it done, it's like painful for me to watch it like the second, third time, because I've seen it, like especially since I have music in my cuts, I get so sick of hearing like the same song, and I'll usually get the song stuck in my head for like 2-3 days straight after I finish editing it. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm
See, I love it, man. I go back and like I watch my own videos on my TV frequently. Like I just enjoy it. I don't know why. And I love showing other, like when I have guests over and stuff, I love showing them my videos, and it's just I think I'm very proud of my work, and it's like, man, that was a cool build, So
do you guys, just kind of on a side topic, do you guys listen to our podcast afterwards?
I usually listen to it once.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to, so.
You have to.
I edit it, so I don't usually listen to it again after that, but occasionally I do. It's kind of fun to hear yourself in the car or whatever. So.
It's weird. Like, it's funny because like I used to listen to all of them, and then it's just kind of a time issue, and I'm like, well, I've already heard this before, so I'll usually listen to a different podcast. But the other day somebody sent a picture of like them driving down the road, and they had like a screenshot of the Crafted podcast on like their touch screen in their car, and I was like, oh my god, like we're legit. Like,
yeah,
this
that
is
was
the real
cool.
deal.
Yeah, I saw
don't
that.
know why I've never seen that before. It's just like, wow, like it looks like we're
a real thing.
Yeah. Not that we weren't at any point. I just saw that and I was like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah, it is cool for sure. It's I mean, I know all the stuff I put out I'm proud of, so going back and listening to it is always enjoyable. And even like watching videos from 7 and 8 months ago, it's amazing how still consistently like style and all that stuff has kind of stayed pretty consistent. So that's kind of cool. So let's see. So one from Jonathan, I think is how you pronounce that, I guess. I think it's Spanish for Jonathan. So what do we do when we find ourselves awake at 5 a.m., unable to sleep, being blasted with tons of great project ideas? So usually for me, it's about 3 a.m., which is unfortunate. If it was 5 a.m., I'd just get up because I get up at 6 anyway. So that's like, that would be no big deal. But 3 a.m. it always feels way too early to actually get out of bed. So usually I just lay there, and if I have some good idea, write it down on my phone, or, find some Pinterest inspirations and add it to the project list. But what about you guys?
If it's keeping me awake, then I get up and work on it. I'll come down to the shop at 2, 3 a.m. and work on a project until I start to feel my eyelids drooping again. Then I'll go back and fall asleep. But if it's something that it's just I want to remember something, then I roll over, punch it into my phone, and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's keeping me awake, then I get up and work on it.
Yeah.
I feel like it happens to me a lot less now that I have the freedom to do what I want when I want. Like when I was working a job, that's when I would always like be inspired as the middle of the night, and then I'd be having to fight myself to go back to sleep because I had to work the next day. And now it's my schedule. If I feel inspired in the middle of the night, like there's nothing holding me back from getting up and doing it. Fortunately, now that like time is my own, that doesn't really happen anymore. So I sleep better and things tend to happen on my own schedule. As far as writing down ideas, I usually mean to, and I'm like, oh, I'll write that down in 5 minutes. And if it's a really good idea, hopefully I'll remember it. But probably 70% of them never make it to paper. So.
Have y'all ever like had something you've either added to your project ideas or like a to-do list, and you've woken up the next morning and been like, what does this mean?
World? Yeah.
Like on my to-do list one time, I just wrote stickers. I'm like, what was that in reference to? Like, what do I need to do with stickers? I have no idea. So
I used to keep a pad of paper beside the bed, but I could never read my handwriting in the middle of the night. And I'd wake up in the morning and just be covered in scribbles.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad it's at least a phone, so then it can't be like just random nonsense. But yeah, it's that's funny. Cool. Well, I guess let's go ahead and move into what we've been, or actually, I guess we got a joke of the week, so let's do that.
Nice.
Another one from Jonathan again. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. I've said it twice now. But so what's a really cheap DIY and consumable you can only buy on Amazon?
I don't know, Johnny. Can you tell me?
Primer. Ba-dum.
I need to start a video with that one.
That was pretty good. That was I liked that. So cool.
I think technically that's the best bad joke we've had because it's so bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It might be the best bad joke of the week.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a pretty cheesy one. We've had some pretty bad ones, but
we have.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk about what we've been watching or reading or whatever. James, you want to go first?
Yeah, I just got my copy of Mortise and Tenon, and this is like, yeah, if you've never seen Mortise and Tenon, it's called Mortise and Tenon magazine, but it's really a journal, and it is dedicated to what's that?
Have you even opened that yet?
I have not, because I'm saving this one until I finish the kitchen. It's my reward for finishing the kitchen. But I've been going back to some of the old ones, and it is a really high-end journal to do with traditional historical woodworking, hand tools, and it is amazingly written, a ton of great info. But the cool thing about it is the way it comes packaged. It actually comes wrapped in crepe paper with a wax stamp and padded with wood curls. And it's like the luxurious spa of hand tool woodworking.
It is an awesome. It so goes beyond a magazine. It's really it's a book basically. Whatever.
It is. I've seen it. It's. The packaging is insane.
It's pretty ridiculous. It's the wood shavings in the envelope really.
What kind of wood is it though? Like what is it? Walnut? So if it's not walnut, they're slacking. If it's like pine,
well, his favorite is I think like white pine, right?
Yeah,
That's well, pine smells pretty good. I'll give it that.
Yeah, and
That
for
was
like
a
hand tool
southern
stuff.
yellow or white pine. I couldn't tell which.
Yeah, I think he's in Maine, so it's probably Eastern White Pine or something like
Yeah.
that. From what I remember, that he also did that documentary or whatever video that was really good too. I think it's called Foundations. It's a really long. It's like something 2+ hours, I think, but quite good. So it's definitely
One of these days it'll come with a bunch of like nasty red oak shavings, and it'll just smell like cat piss.
So
You guys ever cut into red oak and it smells just like smells like feline, like bodily.
I've never used red oak in my life. I hate it, and I never plan on using it. So, although I do have 2 giant red oak logs laying in my side
cut
yard
into
right
some
now.
smelly oak before, man.
Yeah, I mean oak in general. Well, I don't know. Usually white oak has a pretty awesome smell when you cut it. It smells pretty tasty. Nice. What you got, Zach?
What's the question? What are we reading?
Yeah.
What have we been doing? So I've been doing some getting into some leatherworking and trying to build my skill set there with like tooling. And this week I've been doing a lot of like hand stitching and saddle stitching and stuff. And the idea is that well, with the key fobs and stuff on my website, I have a good time taking a break from big projects and just like doing more crafty stuff. I really enjoy it. I feel like it's my new hobby away from my like work hobby. Not that building stuff feels like work or anything, but it's just like after I take a shower and I'm in for the night, and if I still feel inspired to do stuff, it's stuff that I can do. Like I can do leather stuff in the house, in the kitchen, and be clean. And it's like relaxing. Like, you know, even though it takes forever, like saddle stitching is not a fast thing. Like it takes time, and it's really nice. I mean, because sometimes even after a long day of work, I'm not ready to just sit on the couch and veg out. Like I still feel like I want to be doing stuff. So I feel like I've been having a lot of fun with that. But there's this guy named, if you just type in make supply and leather, maybe in a separate word, he has some really good tutorials. And, you know, if you're actually trying to learn how to do stuff, it's not very entertaining, but there's a lot of valuable information there. So that and just a lot of old Al Stolman leather craft books. So that's kind of what I've been digging into this past week.
Nice. Well, mine this week is Jer's Woodshop, and I don't actually know where he's from, but he has a very interesting accent. I think maybe somewhere in the Midwest or something, but he is just really interesting dude. He like over engineers every shop thing you could ever think of. So I was looking for, because as part of this assembly table, I want to be able to like store screws much more effectively. Like right now I just have this giant drawer of just boxes and piles of screws and stuff that are very unorganized. And he came up with this ridiculous system to create a drawer full of hardware boxes that won't move around if you take one out. So if you take one out and close the drawer, they won't slide around, which is very annoying. But like, I'm pretty sure just building this one drawer would be like a 1-day build because of the amount of like crazy, like he cut little grooves into the edges of the drawers or the boxes so they're easier to pick up. It's crazy. So he's got a lot of really cool builds. He built a belt grinder from scratch recently, which was really awesome. He did a very good job on that, but definitely a cool channel. He's pretty dang popular. So if you haven't seen him, definitely recommend checking him out. He's a good editor too, keeps things moving along. So cool. I guess let's close it off with favorite tool of the week. Zach, you got one?
Oh yeah. So where's that thing? When I was making the knife with Iron Dog Knife Works, he busted out this, it's called the Lansky sharpening system. And we put an edge on that knife, and it worked really well. And it's actually really cheap. I think I just ordered the kit after working with his, and I think it was like $38. And
Nice.
it's really easy. You have like detents to do. I think 17, 20, 25, 30, maybe 35. I can't remember, but yeah. So it's just it's a really easy way to put a nice sharp edge on whatever you're working with. And one of the things that I like, I mean, I normally use stones, but one of the things I like about it is just with the design of it. It'll work on curved blades and stuff, so you don't have to worry about getting your angles perfect. It's nice, simple, easy way to put a scary sharp edge on a blade. So
I always love shaving hair.
What do you call it, James? Hand tool pattern baldness?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
Patch that's missing on your non-dominant arm just behind the watch.
one. Yep, I've still got mine. Sharpened my chisels for the first time, and still there.
I need to crack down and buy the same kit that you just bought from James's recommendation, because I have a bunch of whetstones.
It's good, man. It's good.
I have whetstones and they work great, but I know that I put off sharpening stuff because I have to like bust everything out and like let it soak for 10 minutes, put it on the thing, spray it with water. It just take forever. I spend more time prepping to sharpen stuff than I do sharpening stuff, and it's just
the diamond plates I think are where it's at. Although I do think I'm gonna get either the Veritas jig or something, just because I'm still not quite there freehanding it. I feel very uncomfortable doing that, so I think I need to get that just rhythm down a little bit. You know, my training wheels, so to speak.
Yeah, I have the Veritas, and it's good. I mean, I can hand sharpen stuff. I just can't get it as sharp as I can with.
Yeah.
Well, especially for the hybrid person who you're not sharpening every day. It's
like once a year.
If you're doing all hand tools and you're sharpening every single day, you pick it up pretty quickly. But if it's something that you have to relearn every time, then
what did that whole like? So what did that? Was there 3 stones that you have in that?
Yeah, 3 stones. They're each what?
Coarse fine, extra fine.
How much were they? They're like $50 a pop, right, James?
They're like 50, 55 a piece.
Yeah,
so you got $150.
It's not terribly cheap, but they should literally last me like the rest of my life. So
yeah, prefer to use them.
And then I got I had an extra little scrap of leather that I'm using for the strop, and then I got the buffing compound too, I guess. So that was like $5, and some Windex. So that's like another $5. Yeah. But you know, outside of that, man,
what's the Windex for?
That's what you wet the
stone
plates
lubrication.
With.
Really, Windex?
Yeah. Yep.
Because it evaporates quickly, so it won't rust the plate, and it removes the dross, the shavings from the plate.
Wow, I never would have thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do them dry without any lubrication. It's just they'll fill up with the metal chips a little
faster. Have to just give it the occasional blast with it.
I just put one little spritz at the beginning of each sharpening.
Oh, really?
So if it gets dry, though, that's not good, right? It should be pretty wet the whole time, or what's?
No, you can use the DMT stones wet. You can use them dry.
Okay.
It's just the metal shavings don't go anywhere, and so they basically build up in the diamond strata, so you're not actually sharpening as much.
Okay. And so
Windex moves those out of the way as you're running.
Gotcha. So one thing I was running into is when I wiped it dry, I was getting like little bits of the towel left behind. What do you recommend?
Yeah, especially on the coarse one.
Yeah.
I'm using a different towel.
Okay.
I have a towel that I have been using for 2 years, and it is jet black right now, but it was originally white.
Yeah, that's
and when I first used it, it left a lot of junk on there, and just the longer I've used it, the less has been left, and now it stays. I think if you use like a microfiber or something like that, but then you'd have to dedicate a microfiber cloth to it.
How about an air compressor?
Yeah, it's wet and metal shavings. I really don't want to blow that everywhere.
My shop is like...
Yeah, you do what you want to do. That's I'm certainly not doing that. So Jim Dockrell in the comments just said, don't use Windex with ammonia in it. Is that... I think the one I bought had ammonia in it, so...
There are... Yeah, for the cheaper plates, that is an issue. For the DMT solid plates, that's not an issue.
Okay.
Yes, if you want to be the purist, you can eliminate that, but it's not because they're not there is no edge to the nickel coating, so it won't eat at it. if that
Gotcha.
makes sense.
Cool. Well, my pick of this week is the Whiteside chamfering bit because, man, that thing is a beast. It's huge, and I think, the depth of the chamfer I'm putting on there is insane, and it is so clean and pretty much tear out free. It's I pretty much only use Whiteside bits. I think they make the best bits money can buy personally. So.
This
Very much
podcast brought to you by Whiteside Bits.
I wish, man.
best
God
heads.
dang. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on their stinking bits, and they're based like an hour and a half from me. Like, I would love to go to their factory. Like, they've got a really, really cool, like, old school machine shop where they do all this stuff and, like, machine the stuff out of carbide. And I think that would be a very cool
We should talk
tour.
to them.
Yeah, believe me,
This
I've tried.
podcast could be brought to you
Yeah,
by Whiteside Bits.
go look at their website. Go look at their website and come back to me and tell me if you think they've even heard of a podcast, because it's like GeoCities 97 website. It is ridiculous. So yeah,
I'm checking it out right now.
it's pretty bad.
Oh, it's not.
It's pretty bad.
It's
Click on anything. Click on any of the bits, and there's like a little pop-up like PDF image. It's so bad. All right, James, what's your pick?
I'm going to be using the Dead-On Annihilator Wrecking Bar.
Sounds.
Here, I'll leave a link to it right here. And it is, I've owned it for probably like 15 years, if not a little longer. And it is, it's anytime you're doing demolition and construction, it is phenomenal. It has a claw on the back that rips through drywall, a spike that rips through drywall. The split head on the top allows you to easily pry out boards against another 2x4. The split in top of the head also allows you to put it on a 2x4 and twist the 2x4. So if you're putting together a wall, it's great for pulling the twist out of boards before nailing in the studs. It's just one of the most useful tools for general construction and demolition. And I love the thing, and it looks frightening.
it looks like a zombie killing.
Yes,
device.
yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
The murder bar.
Looks like something that Blade would have used, like Wesley Snipes' Blade.
Nice.
So I just posted the link to that Lansky sharpening system in the chat.
No, you didn't, because you're not the
can't
admin.
post it in the chat. I posted it in the.
I
in the
posted
show
it
notes.
earlier, a little higher up.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this show. We ran a little long this week, but that was good. Good show for sure. I'm really. I feel like we could do these dang Q&A episodes every week. It's
I like them
it's
because it's we get to ad lib a little bit.
yeah.
You guys let us know what you want us to talk about.
Yeah, and
for
if
sure.
you guys, I kind of like the idea. I was thinking about it after last week's show of like more like micro topics, like
Yeah.
things that ask questions that we can elaborate on for 5-10 minutes instead of having a whole 30-minute chunk dedicated to one topic. I just feel like it's probably a little bit more entertaining. So if you guys have any questions, please ask them. We like that helps us out. So
For sure. Another thing that helps us out on that perfect segue is Patreon. Patreon.com/craftedpodcast. Great way to support the show. The only way to support the show, actually. And so show us some love over there. And we are slowly creeping up on that weekend show goal. Really hoping to add that. I want to start interviewing some more people one-on-one because I think that's a really fun thing to do. And
what are we at right now, and what do we need to be at for the weekend?
like 165, and we've been there for a while, so no pressure. But
What's our
250?
250?
Mm-hmm.
So if all of our listeners could donate $50, we'll be there.
$50 each?
Yeah. All three of our listeners.
All three. Yeah, there you go. Nice. All right, cool. Well, thanks to everyone for listening. And until next week, happy building.
See ya.
Take care.